Hey there, this is Jacob Wood with Douglas Elliman Real Estate, and I'm here with Rob Stevenson. Rob is a general contractor for KBR Design and Build, and I'll let him share with you more about exactly the products that they offer. And Rob, I've been doing real estate for 7 years, over 100 transactions. I am constantly running across general contractors, handymen, fellows with vans full of tools. And Rob is by far the most beneficial expert I have found as far as accessibility, as far as technical expertise, and just being a helpful guide to buyers and sellers in how to manage the renovation process so that it's not intimidating, so you don't get caught in any bear traps that you hear people talk about. So Rob, first of all, thanks so much for making time out of your busy schedule to join myself and everyone watching today.
Great. Hi, Jacob. Thanks for inviting me along. I wholeheartedly believe that what you're doing here is a very beneficial way to go for buyers and sellers. I think in my many years doing this, I found that the people that have the most problems with renovations are the people with the least information, the people who have the least amount of research. So I think what you're doing on both the buyer and the seller side, by providing them as much insight as possible, is very helpful and can ultimately help the buyers make the right choice in what apartment they buy, because they can avoid pitfalls or expensive renovations. And I think the sellers can benefit because they'll know what the buyers are looking for and what the cost structure may be, and they can make their properties more attractive.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, I think that it's my experience that the circumstances under which people find themselves in need of a general contractor most commonly is you're a buyer, you see a home, you love it, except it just hasn't been renovated in 30 or 40 years. And so when I introduce them to you, one of the things I find most helpful is you agree to meet them in the home and go through room to room and brief them on what the renovation process is likely to look like. Why is it that going from your office to the home and meeting them just right off the bat, why do you find that so helpful?
Well, our process at KBR as a design build company is that we want to see the facility. We want to see the property that someone is buying before we provide a quote, because we want to see the existing conditions. I want to see what the floors look like. I want to see what the ceiling and the walls look like. I want to see how much work the kitchen may require. And so our goal is to inform the client as much as possible on site, and then refer to those items on site and give them a bird's eye view of what may need to be done. In renovation, you always have to consider what's behind the walls. You need to consider what the plumbing and the electrics and the joists and the studs are going to do to affect the project. And looking at a listing picture and a real estate brochure or an online blog doesn't convey that. You get nice renderings that the properties look great, but you always need to have a site visit to really inspect the walls and see how bumpy they may be, and see how much plumbing needs to be replaced, see the condition of the electrical panel, see how old it is, see how much power is coming into the apartment, because every 4 or 5 years the city upgrades its rule book. And if an apartment has not been renovated for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it's outdated, and the seller should know what it will cost to update it to the current standard.
By outdated, you mean at least the electrics, if not the plumbing, is going to just codes have been updated and you're going to need to replace the stuff.
Yeah, every 4 years, the city tinkers around with its code book. Sometimes they focus on electric, sometimes they focus on structural, sometimes they focus on plumbing. The most recent upgrades have been focusing on structural. For instance, if you want to drop the ceiling in a building, prior, you didn't really need to have an architect. But these days, if you want to drop an expansive space, have a large drop ceiling in your property, the city wants an architect to file that piece of work with them so they can verify that it's a safe piece of work, because there have been instances recently where ceilings have fallen down and dropped on people. So the city these days now wants an architect to certify that new ceiling is being installed correctly. So right now the city is really focusing on structural changes within its code book. Prior to that, the city was focused on electric and gas. You cannot move a gas line when you do a renovation. There are all sorts of things which the city focuses on, and every few years the rule book changes. So it's very important to have your contractor be aware of the rule book, so when they do the renovation, they can make the appropriate but up-to-date code changes.
Okay, and we can certainly talk about townhouses where there can be a whole host of surprises through the process. But when we're talking about vertical housing, co-ops and condos, and as far as zoning goes in Manhattan, because it's not our home at that point, and so we're not poking holes in the walls yet, what can we tell about plumbing and electric simply from a walkthrough of the space?
The first thing I always look for, and the first thing I always point out to a potential buyer, is the electrical panel, the power supply for the unit. In Manhattan, in the city right now, the minimum amount of power that you have to have for every apartment is 65 amps. So if the apartment has a very old panel and it's less than 65, right away it needs to be upgraded, and you have to have 65 so that it can power modern devices. You remember, a lot of these co-ops, condos, townhouses, whatever, were built 60, 80, 100 years ago. And in many instances, they have electrical panels with 25 or 40 amps. That does not power modern devices or the way we live. So we have to upgrade it. If we don't upgrade it, there is a greater chance of a fire, an electrical outage, a circuit breaker. So we have to always look for the electrical, make sure it's up to date, make sure it's to code, and changed appropriately. One of the rules that happened a few years ago was that you can no longer have an electrical panel in a kitchen or bathroom. But a lot of apartments were built with them inside the kitchen and bathroom.
Yep.
So if you don't touch them, you are grandfathered in, you're safe. But when you buy an apartment and when you want to renovate it, if the electrical panel is in the wrong place, we have to move it to a place where it's safe, like a foyer or a living room or a foyer.
Gotcha. Okay. And when it comes to, I know you mentioned issues with moving gas lines, we might tour a building where we know that 12B has their oven against the eastern wall of the kitchen, and 13B has their oven against the western or the northern wall of the kitchen. How can that be accomplished without moving gas lines, or did someone, move a gas line before it wasn't allowed?
Yeah, that's a good case. There's two paths. Either it was moved before the rule changes. It was moved back in the day when people weren't concerned about moving gas lines, or it was moved and the project was filed by an architect and certified as being safe. Architects are the judge and jury of renovations. So they're certified licensed professionals. So as long as your architect can certify that moving a piece of equipment is safe and to code, the Department of Buildings will allow for it. So you can move panels and you can move gas lines as long as the architect certifies it's a safe piece of work. And that is filed through a piece of paper called the Alt-2, which is the Alteration Type 2 Agreement. And that particular paperwork is used for all renovations that need an architect.
Okay, when it comes to renovations that need an architect, I know minor stuff may not, but what are some of the things buyers might want to do in which they'd want to plan to hire an architect?
The rule book, again, guides us. The city guidebook will tell us, but the general rules are, if you're demolishing a complete wall, a complete structural wall, if you're demolishing more than 50% of a structural wall, if you are relocating a kitchen or bathroom, if you are moving the kitchen from one end of the house to the other, if you are doing things like that, they are all considered structural. and you have to file the project with the city to prove it's safe. The reason why the city wants to know that is that we all live in very high density buildings.
Yeah.
So you can't just move pipes and kitchens and bathrooms around without it affecting your neighbors. So the city wants an architect to certify that all this moving around is safe and your roof won't fall down when you knock a wall out, or your construction project won't affect people living below you. So the city is always very interested in seeing plans where you're moving structures, knocking out walls, moving the gas line, things that affects health and safety they want to see.
Gotcha. Okay. And what are the implications of needing to add an architect to a renovation project?
Well, there's at last count, there's about 17,000 registered architects in New York City.
All right.
Commercial, retail, residential, all different landscape, all different types. But there are many residential architects, and our company at KBR, we know many of them. We work with many of them. So when we have a project and we know it's going to need an architect to file it, we would recommend a couple of architects to our clients. The client has to hire the architect directly. They cannot hire the architect through the contractor. It's not legal for a contractor to employ an architect for conflict of interest. You know, you never want to just trust your contractor's architect, because then as a client, you would never really know if the price is correct and if you're being charged the fair rate. So the city has a rule whereby architects and GCs are separate entities. I can recommend good architects to my clients, but my clients have to hire them independently so they know they are getting a fair and honest representation of the job. And then once they've paid for the architect to do the work, then the project comes back to the GC and we execute it.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, it reminds me of the relationship between bankers and appraisers. A lot of buyers are under the misconception that the appraiser works for the bank, when the same conflict of interest issue, you know, they don't have any relationship at all. Okay, that makes sense.
And right now in the city, architects are all independent contractors, just like many other businesses. So there's a rate, there's a variance, but generally speaking, architects right now are charging between 10,000 and 15,000 to file a renovation project O2. That's roughly the price variance. Some architects that work from home office and don't have a support staff, they will charge you less. Other architects that have assistants, and there's maybe 2 or 3 in a firm, they'll charge you more because their overhead is higher. But also architects tend to charge you more for the complexity of the project. So if you're renovating a townhouse and there's lots of paperwork to file, lots of plumbing and electric is moving around, lots of structural walls are coming down, and maybe you have to contend with the LPC, maybe you have to contend with all sorts of historical and community boards, etc. More filing goes into it, so the architect will charge you more. Architects will also charge you more if they are physically designing the project, meaning picking out the tiles, picking out the floor planks, picking out the stove. If they're picking out the materials, they will charge you for time. But if they're just filing the project, just filing it to certify it's safe and working with your GC, that's when you save money.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, you know, let's say I'm a buyer and I walk into a space that structurally is fantastic, an apartment. It just needs renovation. Renovations haven't been touched in 30, 40 years. What sort of back of the envelope estimates am I able to get from you in order to help me in, you know, bidding on the property? Because I'm in a tough spot. I have to negotiate acceptable terms with the seller months before the first hammer is going to be swung. How much information can I get as far as cost estimate, and how detailed can that be so that I'm confident negotiating with the seller?
Every contractor approaches that slightly differently, but at KBR, what we do, we can go through a project and we will provide a no-cost labor estimate for the renovation. So if the client says to me they want to just renovate the kitchen, and perhaps a bathroom, I can give them the labor cost for that. I cannot give them the full total cost though, because I don't know what materials they'll be choosing. I don't know the
Sure.
level or the price point of their bathtub or their stove or their
Right.
refrigerator, but I know the labor cost to install those things. So generally speaking, right now in Manhattan and Brooklyn, the cost to renovate a kitchen is around $50,000 to $60,000. That's all in. That's the labor, the materials, the permits.
Okay.
To renovate a bathroom right now is about $35,000 to $40,000. To renovate a one-bedroom apartment, 125 to 145.
Okay.
To renovate a 2,000-3,000 square foot apartment, you're looking at $250,000 to $300,000. And these are very familiar, regular price points that we are experiencing currently and have been for a while now. So I always tell people right away, I like to tell people right away, I'm going to give you the true number, the true honest number of where this renovation will cost you, so you can put that number into your negotiation thinking with your broker and help them negotiate the right buying price.
Okay. And you know, it is as a testament to the usefulness of being upfront about those costs, those numbers seem higher than, you know, quick back of the envelope numbers you might quote me for a kitchen or a bathroom 18 to 24 months ago.
Yeah, since the city reopened after COVID, the business sector, the renovation sector has been just on fire. It's been so much. We are at all-time historical highs in terms of the volume of our business. And we put that down to the fact that many people during the shutdown were sitting at home, still getting paid, but had nowhere to spend the money. They had one or two incomes, but they were working from home. The restaurants are closed, the shops were closed, the sports facilities were closed. People were still getting their paychecks. So when the city reopened, they had money to burn. And they were sitting at home looking at their kitchens and bathrooms saying, we need to renovate.
Sure.
At the same time, property prices dipped. And so there was a lot of value to be had. And so people who wanted to move decided to move. So right now we've got a lot of business from the people who are in place and renovating where they live. And we've got a lot of business from people who are buying new property and renovating before they move in. So the whole industry is very busy. But what that does, that takes the supply out of the business and that pushes up prices. So the labor costs are definitely moving higher. Vendor costs are moving higher. Lead times are moving higher. And unfortunately, we've incurred maybe an 8 to 12% labor charge increase just this year, just because inflation and demand has pushed the prices higher. Yep. So yes, you are correct. A renovation this year, if you're just renovating a kitchen or a bathroom, you can expect it to cost anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 more this year than last year.
Okay, that'd be between 10 and 20%, it sounds like.
Yeah, because you have to compound the fact that the cost of insurance has gone up. Buildings are requiring GCs to have more insurance now than ever before. COVID strict, changes of paperwork. Buildings are much stricter now. They don't want day laborers or cheap contractors walking around their facilities for fear that they're not vaccinated. They don't know who these guys are. So they're insisting that reputable contractors have higher insurance umbrellas to enter the buildings to ensure we are only employing safe and vaccinated workers. So that pushes up our costs. That plus the cost of increased vendor costs, lead times are longer. The whole industry is in a inflationary cycle right now.
Gotcha. Okay. It's interesting. One issue I run into with buyers when discussing the cost of renovation is a general contractor will give them an estimate of, let's say, $250K to renovate a home. And 2-bedroom, 1,400 square foot home or something. And, their internal calculus is, okay, my GC told me 250. So that probably means 350. And so I should budget 400. And so that's the calculus I'm going to come into negotiations with. And, of course, no seller is going to allow a buyer to budget 40% of fluff into their renovation estimate, and they've priced themselves out of the negotiation. How confident, but of course, no buyer wants to get an estimate of 250 and then have that run over a month into the project either. So how confident can a buyer be, and how do we, in their estimate, and how do we avoid buyers getting surprises after the demolition starts, but also buyers lack of confidence causing them to price themselves out of negotiations?
Our model, our KBR model, is that we always give the clients the most accurate labor estimate we possibly can at the time that they sign the contract with us. If we incur any change of raw material costs or labor costs, that's within our contingencies. We do not pass that on to the client. Whatever they sign for is what they pay for. So they are, to some degree, insured against rising costs. The only things they have to watch out for is the rising cost of materials. We can't predict or control the cost of a refrigerator may be higher in 3 months, or a stove or tiles, but labor we can control to some degree. But our model at KBR is not to offer a sweet deal to entice clients. We don't have low, sweet, enticing offers. There's no specials or sale prices. There's no lowball prices. We actually go into a renovation pretty much at the middle to high end, so we can give the client a true, honest reflection of what to expect. Other contractors may offer sweet deals, special pricing to get them to sign, and then they hit them later with price increases. We don't do that. We like to have everything in the project, give the customer a true number to reflect upon before they sign. And then once they sign, there's usually very little surprises because everything's already in. We know the true cost of renovation. We do this all the time. I know that there will be an electrical permit. I know there will be a plumbing permit. I know approximately the cost of architectural services. I know the costs of adding waterproofing, etc., to a job. I know some of these things. I can safely predict what is ahead. So we have very little problem with going over budget in that respect. The most common times when we see budget expenditures is when people basically get a bit excited about picking materials, because that often happens. People will tell me, oh, my budget for materials is 50,000. But by the time they've picked out the nice sink, the nice refrigerator, the nice stove, the great looking tiles, the nice cabinets, by the time they've upgraded themselves, the budget is now $70,000. Sure. So we find that clients get quite excited, and that's where most of the price increases end up being, in the material section.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, the other common response I get when giving, quick renovation estimates is if I say, oh, you ought to expect, one GC will give an estimate of 50,000 for a kitchen. And they're supposed to, oh, my cousin's brother, he's got a couple of guys, he can come in and do it for 25. What, how seriously should a buyer take an estimate like that? What are any issues with it?
I'm very open to telling people, offering good advice. I try and let my potential clients know as much as I do about the renovation and the costs before they enter any kind of agreement. When you get a deal, you should actually, when you enter a renovation, you should always get 3 or 4 competing estimates, first of all. Okay. And if 2 or 3 of those estimates are in the same price bracket and one is substantially lower or higher, there's something wrong about that outlying estimate.
Mhm.
If it's substantially low, there's something very wrong with it. It usually means that they are missing a lot of the work. It means they aren't accounting for a lot of the work. If one of the bids is substantially higher, it means they're padding a lot of extra money in there for potential unknowns, which may not be needed. So you should always pick someone in the middle where the group of pricing is. But there are reasons why some contractors can come in very much lower. And that usually is because the low bid contractors usually don't have an office. They don't have employees. They don't have a Manhattan location. They're usually small operations operating out of Bayshore, Bayside, Jamaica, Queens. They're usually operating in these outer areas and operating out of the guy's kitchen. They're not professional businesses. And they have no overhead. What they do is they get a job and then they go onto the open labor market and look for laborers to do the job. They hope they can hire the guys who can do the job properly at a low price. Companies like ourselves in the middle of the price bracket, we have full-time staff. I know my costs because my staff is fixed. Our office costs, our designer costs, our production costs, we know our fixed costs. So we will, by comparison, be higher than some companies just because we have a full service operation. I know who your designer is. I know who your production team is. I know which electrician I'm using. I know which plumber I'm using. I know everything about your job, Mr. Customer, before you've even hired me. I know because we use our team is there. We're professional. We do it every day. But the smaller contractors who offer really great deals usually have no idea who they're going to use. Oftentimes you find that the plumber is doing some electrics, or you'll find the electrician doing some painting, or you'll find the painter trying his hand at plumbing. That's what happens with these lower cost contractors. They've seen it and they all try it and they save money. But with the higher price contractors, it means we are only using certified licensed professionals, and that comes with a cost. My plumber only does plumbing. He will not help you paint the apartment. My painter will not install a few outlets, even though if he can, he still will not do it. We use licensed professionals to do each job so we can sign off on it and say it's done correctly to code. And that explains why our price point is in the middle as opposed to other contractors that may seem too good to be true.
Understood. Okay. Now, another worry that buyers have, apart from money when trying to negotiate with sellers and plan their lives, is time. They'll, kind of get into the same racket with their estimates where, my contractor told me this is a 3 to 4 month job, so he probably means 6, and I'm going to be out of my apartment for 9 months, so I'm going to factor those carrying costs in any offer I make. And they've priced themselves out of the negotiation. How confident can we be in how long these projects are going to take?
It comes down to, we are very confident about how long the actual labor process takes. We know a kitchen takes about 5 weeks to install. We know a bathroom takes about 4 weeks. We know these things. We do this day in, day out. We know, and we can schedule our production teams to make it so. But the things we cannot control are the materials. If the kitchen cabinets are not in stock, and if there's a 10-week lead time to get those kitchen cabinets, we plan our production crew around that 10-week lead time. But if those cabinets then get delayed because the manufacturer is stuck, our project gets pushed out. So, and that goes for plumbing, tiling, painting, whatever. Finished materials is where a project can go over the lead time just because of the availability. I always tell clients, don't buy the last thing that's in stock. If you go to our website and you see there's one faucet left and you must have it, don't buy it, because usually it's just a placeholder. Usually that one faucet doesn't exist. It's not on the warehouse shelves. It has to be shipped in from Europe or somewhere. And that 3-week in stock lead time is not correct. Faucets, taps, lighting, um, dishwashers, those things right now are all unpredictable. We don't really know when the lead times are. We hope they come in, but right now with the increasing cost, inflation, high demand, lead times are not really set tight anymore. They're very unpredictable. So I always tell clients, try to pick your materials as quickly as you can, order them as quickly as you can, pay for them as quickly as you can, and then we'll install them as soon as they come in.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, when it comes to picking materials, how does KBR's in-house design function come into play, and in what position are you in to help buyers with that decision?
We are a design build GC, so we have a staff of in-house designers, and we do not charge for design services. Our designers are a complementary feature of working with us. So every project that we sign, we allocate one of our designers to your project. You automatically get access to a designer, and your designer will be with you for the whole duration of that project. So the designer's function is to help design the layout of the renovation, put the fridge where you want it, put the stove where you want it, put the cabinets where you want them, lay it out, show your blueprint, show your 3D renderings, and then order all the materials for that project.
Okay.
Designers are also there to help control the budget. If you want a $10,000 Sub-Zero refrigerator, but you only have a $15,000 overall budget, your designer will tell you that it won't work. And your designer will help you find a more affordable refrigerator that will fit into that $15,000 budget. So the designers are very good at helping you create and control the budgets, as well as picking out the actual materials from any vendor that you choose to care for. We do not represent any brands. We do not represent any distribution channels. That means we are bespoke. That means you can order absolutely anything, and we will find that for you from our vendors at the best possible price.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. And I'm curious, what mistakes do you typically see people making when renovating a home at various points of the process?
The main thing is, and it's common sense. I know we've spoken about this in the past. It's people who are jumping into renovations with little or no preparation, and then they end up being very surprised at how much they cost. Renovations are not cheap enterprises. It's not like watching HD TV and expecting everything to be done quickly and cheaply. That does not happen in Manhattan. Manhattan and Long Island are the only two places in the whole country that have a Department of Buildings. And the DOB insists on certain codes and practices, and we have to follow those codes and practices. Those things mean the cost of your project is much higher than you want it to be. We have to maintain. We've got $7 million of insurance. We have to have that just to enter a building. That's costly. Electrical permits and plumbing permits are a combined $4,000. You have to have those to do your job. Replacing plumbing and flooring, soundproofing beneath the new floors. There's many things that the buildings will insist that can add up to $10,000 to any project. So, people need to know these things in advance. See, it's the days of just looking for a cheap renovation are not here, and people are always thinking they can do things cheaply. Sure. But they make the mistake of thinking that things don't cost as much as they do, and they do. To do a good job, you need licensed tradespeople, and you need a proper GC to do the work. If you try and do it yourself, you'll end up missing a lot of the details. A lot of people try and do things themselves, don't realize that you have to have plumbing inside the wall, not just plumbing on the outside the wall. And how does it fit? How do the seals and valves and how does it all fit together? They don't know where to find those things, and they forget to order them. So the temptation to do it yourself is always a bad thing. But if you're just painting, that's easy. But if you're doing structural work, do it with a qualified GC.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, on the other side of the process, if I'm a seller and
Mhm.
my home hasn't been renovated in years and years, and I don't want to give the buyer a huge discount to do their own renovation, what are the simple, most economical things I can do, short of a six-figure renovation, that will give me the most bang for my buck with the value of my home?
There are three things I always tell people. You can refinish if the most Manhattan apartments have wood floors, parquet floors, or planks or something. If you have wood floors, the first thing you should always do is refinish them.
Hmm.
You don't need to replace them, but just refinish them. Spend $3, $4, $5,000, whatever the cost may be, depends upon the size of the apartment. But refinish the floors to make the floors look even, nice, and glossy, and paint the apartment. They're the two main things you can do, because they're the things that people notice the most when they walk into a new property. The next thing they always look at is the kitchen. Now, you can't afford to renovate a kitchen when you're the seller, but I always recommend people replace some of the closet doors, perhaps, or
Uh-huh.
replace the bedroom doors. Again, does not need to be expensive. You haven't got to change the frames, but change the doors, because people are going to be opening and closing those doors. They're going to be walking through those doors on their walk around the apartment. So repaint it, freshen the floors, change the doors, and I would say they're the main three things you can do.
Gotcha. Okay. It is becoming more popular for brokerages to offer, I don't know if a bridge loan is the appropriate term, but rebates to sellers for renovation costs of dated
Mhm.
homes. And I find that it's a common uh, cause of sellers. You see them throw good money after bad, where you have a home where nothing's been touched in 30 years and it has this beautiful new floor, or the
Yeah,
entire
yeah,
home
yeah.
hadn't been touched in 30 years, but someone plopped a $50,000 kitchen into this estate condition apartment. And
Mhm.
you haven't just up your sale price by if you get every dollar you put into it for something like that back out, you're lucky. You increased your sales cost by 50K max. But what I see offer a 5-to-1, 6-to-1 return on investment are exactly these things that you mentioned: refinishing, repainting, replacing obvious signs of wear and tear on fixtures.
Yeah, I would never recommend renovating the kitchen or bathrooms to a seller, never, because what the buyer is going to use the buyer's taste level is going to dictate the property in the future. Let the buyers renovate. Let the buyers put their money into it, because you don't know what their taste level is going to be, and they may really dislike your renovation to sell anyway. Don't
Right.
waste your money. It's a bad investment spending serious money to update a property. Leave it. If anything, sell it as a fixer-upper or something. But
Mhm.
painting, refinishing the floors, replacing a few doors, relatively inexpensive. Do those things, but don't do a kitchen or bathroom renovation. It's just not worth the money.
Gotcha.
If
Okay.
you're a seller, you won't get it back.
Uh-huh. Understood.
And
Okay.
besides, a guy like me will come into that property and still pick apart things that need to be done and
Sure.
still chip away at the listing price. So
Hmm.
you may have just taken a concierge loan for 25,000 to spruce the place up. A guy like me comes in and says, "You still need $125,000 of work." It doesn't make sense. So I would err on the side of letting let the buyer make that decision. Let them spend their money. Don't let the sellers spend too much.
Gotcha. Okay. And another thing I run into looking at homes that were obviously renovated to sell is they may have done a complete renovation of the entire home, but it was obviously done on the cheap, obviously done to resell, where the taste is
Mhm.
very bland and very one size fits
Yeah.
all. You
And you can
can't
tell
tell
as soon as you walk into a property that's renovated to sell, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell they went to Home Depot and just bought cheap kitchen cabinets, cheap this, cheap that, cheap that.
Mhm.
And it's going to be pulled out as soon as the new buyers
Yep.
buy it. They're going to pull out that new renovation. It just looks cheap. If you're buying a $3 million property and there's a $25,000 kitchen in there, you're gonna pull it. You're gonna pull it out, no matter
Right.
how recently it was done. You
Mhm.
just buyers of a certain magnitude, of a certain taste level. They're not gonna. They're gonna see it and rip it out. So the sellers shouldn't even go to that cost. Just leave it as a fixer-upper, condition to be sold as is, and let your brokers figure out the right price, and
Mhm.
then the buyer can then actually renovate. And that's the best way of doing things. You can also use your architect to make the new property exactly how you want it to fit your lifestyle. If
Mhm.
the seller is trying to predict your lifestyle, it doesn't work. It's just wasted money.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay. Excellent. Well, Rob, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. It's hugely beneficial. Every time I speak with you, it is. I'm going to, regardless of what medium someone's watching this on, I'm going to make sure that Rob's contact info is in the comments. Also, you can contact me, Jacob Wood, Douglas Elliman Real Estate, and I'm happy to
Excellent.
connect you with Rob. He is my go-to GC for my clients. So, Rob, again, thank you so much, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thanks, Jacob. Thank you very much for the invitation. And as always, I love the way you work when you work with your clients, because you give them the option of working with a renovation firm prior to buying a property. A lot of brokers don't even think like that. They don't think it's a benefit, but I think it's very beneficial for potential buyers to link up with a broker and a GC before they put the bid in. It could end up saving them a lot of time, a lot of money, and getting them a far better deal. So I applaud you for doing what you do, and may you continue it.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
All
Have
right,
a great day.
you too. Thanks, Jacob.
Bye-bye.